The first to move reveals his intentions. The second to move holds the advantage. In the game of power, reaction is surrender. Today, I will teach you why the one who never reacts first cannot be cornered, cannot be read, and cannot be defeated. Power is not taken in haste, it is preserved in patience. The weak man lunges forward, eager to prove himself, and in that moment bares his soul to the enemy. The strong man waits not in idleness, but in calculation. He forces the world to show its hand first, draining their strength as they attempt to provoke him. In this lesson, we step into the shadows where control is silent, where your enemies destroy themselves while you remain unmoved, untouchable, inevitable. The first move feels powerful. It feels bold. It feels like control. But in truth, it is often the first step into a trap you cannot see. When you act first, you do not just move. You reveal. Your direction becomes known. Your resources become visible. Your mind becomes exposed. And the one who waits now knows where to strike. Think of war. In 216 BC, at Cannae, the Romans rushed forward in overwhelming force against Hannibal. They believed the sheer weight of their legions would crush him. Instead, Hannibal let them come, slowly pulling his forces back, folding them into a crescent, until the Romans were surrounded on all sides. Their eagerness to act first sealed their fate. The principle has not changed in over 2,000 years. In politics, in business, in personal rivalries, those who lunge forward out of impulse think they are seizing the initiative. In reality, they are surrendering the most valuable thing they have, their unpredictability. Consider this. When you speak first in a negotiation, you show your boundaries. When you attack first in a rivalry, you expose your reach. When you reveal your plan too early, you invite it to be dismantled piece by piece. The mind that acts without waiting to observe is like a hunter firing at shadows. Wasting arrows before the prey is even in range. Why does the first mover so often lose? Because humans are emotional creatures. We are drawn to action when provoked. We believe standing still means weakness, but in power the opposite is true. Stillness is the shield of kings. Ask yourself, why do chess masters let their opponents make the first aggressive move? Because every move reveals the shape of the enemy's thinking. Every move creates weaknesses. Every move can be studied and countered. The first strike may feel glorious, but glory is a fleeting drug. It clouds judgment. It forces commitment before knowledge. And knowledge is what wins wars. You must learn to let others come to you. Let them step forward in arrogance, believing they dictate the tempo. Let them spend their energy revealing their desires and fears. Imagine two rivals in a court. One rushes forward with accusations, thinking he will win favor. The other stays silent, listening, letting the accuser speak until he says too much. By the time the silent man responds, the room already doubts the frantic one. He has shown too much. Patience is not passivity. It is control. It is the art of making another believe you are inert when you are, in truth, measuring the strike. History rewards those who mastered it. In the Italian city-states, the most feared leaders rarely acted first in disputes. They allowed other factions to exhaust themselves, revealing alliances, spending resources, and exposing their ambitions. Then, when the dust settled, not with desperation, but with precision, to act second is not to be slow. It is to be deliberate. It is to make a decision when the board is visible, not hidden. This is not just about battles or politics. It is about every human exchange. When someone insults you, the weak mind reacts instantly, revealing insecurity. The strong mind does not react at all until the moment comes when a single, measured word will do more damage than 100 impulsive ones. Have you noticed? Those who rush to prove themselves are rarely feared. They are predictable. They are easy to draw out, easy to manipulate, easy to destroy. You must become unraidable. You must cultivate a presence that does not betray urgency. When others expect you to react, you give them nothing. Let them feel the silence like a tightening noose. Let them wonder what you are thinking. Let them fear the blow they cannot yet see. To refuse the first move is to force your enemy to step into the open. And once they are there, stripped of the fog that once hid them, You may strike with the full knowledge of their weaknesses. The battlefield may be a boardroom, a council chamber, or a whispered conversation in the dark. It does not matter. The one who moves first underestimates the weight of exposure. The one who moves second wields the sword of certainty. So, the next time your pride tempts you to act, stop. Breathe. Ask yourself, is this my move or theirs? Because once you step forward without knowing the whole field, you are no longer the hunter. You are the prey. Silence is not absence. Silence is presence sharpened into a weapon. The weak man fills the air with noise. He speaks to prove he exists. He answers every word, as if his survival depends on being understood. But the one who holds power understands every sound is a disclosure, and every disclosure can be used against you. In the court of power, your greatest advantage is not what you say. It is what you refuse to say. Consider the diplomat who says nothing at the bargaining table while the others argue. The impatient speak until they reveal their limits, their fears, and their desperation. And the silent man, he listens, he weighs, he decides when the smallest phrase will strike harder than 1,000 speeches. This is the essence of weaponized silence. It is not withdrawal, it is pressure. Have you ever watched a man unravel because his question went unanswered? It begins as confusion, then irritation, then a creeping insecurity that whispers, why will he not speak? What does he know? Your refusal to respond forces others to speak more, to guess, to imagine dangers that may not even exist. In their attempt to fill your silence, they expose themselves. In medieval Florence, rival families often met to negotiate peace. The shrewdest leaders would allow the opposing faction to speak for hours without interruption. By the time the silent leader responded, he had not only learned their full position, but had forced them into the exhausting labor of revealing it. The silence became an invisible battlefield, and the enemy walked into it willingly. You can see this in interrogation rooms. A suspect is questioned and then left in silence. Minutes stretch into hours. The mind begins to eat itself. Guilt, fear, even innocence. It all becomes tangled until the silence breaks them. The same principle applies to everyday power struggles. An adversary insults you in public. The crowd waits for your outrage, but you give them nothing, only a faint smile, perhaps, or a measured glance. You do not fight in the arena they chose. Instead, you make them fight in the arena you control the silence. This is psychological warfare, and it is devastating. Why? Because people fear the unknown more than the known. Words are fixed. They can be debated, denied, or reinterpreted. But silence is an empty mirror. Your opponent sees whatever they fear most reflected back at them. The key is discipline. Most people cannot endure the discomfort of silence. They rush to fill it, believing it makes them seem confident. In truth, they are handing their power away. Weaponizing silence is not passivity. It is an active choice. It is watching the board until every piece is visible, and then moving only when the moment is perfect. Think of Julius Caesar crossing the Rubicon. Before that moment, he endured years of political maneuvering, never revealing the exact instant he would act. His silence masked his intent until the choice was irreversible. And by the time his enemies understood, it was too late. But beware, silence must be used with precision. If overplayed, it becomes suspicion without purpose. If used without timing, it loses its edge. You must control its rhythm. Sometimes a pause of 3 seconds can break a man mid-sentence. Sometimes a day of silence can make an enemy sleepless. Sometimes months of silence can make an entire court wonder what move you are planning, until they tear themselves apart trying to guess. And you must pair silence with presence. It is not enough to be absent, you must be visibly still. Your eyes steady. Your posture calm. The room must feel that your silence is not ignorance, but decision. You are not retreating, you are tightening the net. Remember this, when you speak, you tell the world who you are. When you are silent, you force the world to tell you who they are. This is why weaponized silence is feared by those who live through impulse. They cannot understand why their words bounce off you. They cannot measure your mind. And so they overreach, and in that overreach, they bleed. Time is not just a measure. It is a weapon. Most people see time as a constant, ticking forward at the same pace for all. But in the hands of a strategist, time bends. It speeds when you wish it to, and it slows when delay serves your ends. The fool moves because the clock tells him to. The master moves when the moment tells him to. Strategic delay is the art of holding your move until the world has shifted in your favor. It is patience with a blade hidden inside it. Consider the siege of Constantinople in 1453. The Ottomans could have attacked sooner. But Mehmeti waited, stockpiled resources, studied the city's weaknesses, and let the defenders grow complacent. Only when the balance was perfect did he strike, ending 1,000 years of empire in less than 2 months. The years of delay made the final attack inevitable. Ask yourself, how many of your battles have been lost because you acted too soon? Because you allowed urgency, fear, or pride to dictate your timing. When you delay strategically, you let your opponent act in ignorance. You give them the illusion of safety. You let them commit to positions that will betray them later. This is why merchants in the Renaissance often waited for their competitors to flood the market before selling their own goods. When prices crashed from oversupply, they moved in with hidden reserves, buying everything at a fraction of its value. They were not slow, they were patient predators. The psychology is simple. Most people cannot endure waiting. Their emotions burn through their discipline. They mistake stillness for weakness. And so they move first, thinking they have the advantage. In truth, they have given you the most valuable thing, information. Every day you delay, you watch, you listen, you gather intelligence. The shape of the battlefield becomes clearer. Delay also exhausts your enemies. A rival prepared for conflict is dangerous in the first hours, but hold your ground for weeks, months, and their fire cools. Supplies dwindle. Allies drift away. Doubt spreads like rot. The same applies in personal battles. An adversary may be ready to confront you today, full of confidence. But if you refuse to meet them on their timetable, if you stretch the conflict beyond their endurance, they will falter. Their certainty will decay into hesitation, and hesitation is where you strike. But do not mistake delay for indecision. Indecision is drift without purpose. Delay is a decision sharpened by time. There is a danger in moving too late. A delayed blow loses its power if the moment has passed. This is why you must be a student of timing. You must sense the turning of the tide before others do. Think of a serpent in the grass. It does not strike because it is provoked. It strikes when the prey has wandered too close to escape. Strategic delay can also be a trap. You may appear too weak to act, inviting your enemy to advance deeper into the terrain you have prepared for them. When they are fully committed, when retreat would mean humiliation or ruin, that is when you close the jaws. Even the perception of delay can be useful. If people believe you are slow to act, they will underestimate your readiness. They will gamble more boldly, thinking they are safe. And nothing is more satisfying than watching confidence turn to panic when the blow they thought would never come arrives in full force. But delay requires mastery over yourself. Your greatest enemy will not be your rival, it will be your own impatience. The itch to act, the fear of appearing inactive, the dread that you might miss the moment. Control that, and you will control the game. Remember this: the man who acts too soon is blind. The man who acts too late is dead. The man who acts at the exact moment he chooses is untouchable. You must make time your servant. Stretch it when you need space to gather strength. Compress it when your enemy is unprepared. Bend it until the final strike feels inevitable, as though no other outcome was ever possible. Delay is not a pause in the battle. It is the battle. It is the slow tightening of the noose, the gradual sealing of every exit, the invisible weight that presses until your enemy collapses under the burden of waiting. The provoker believes they control the game. They prod, they push, they test your limits. They seek to make you move on their command, like a puppet on invisible strings. But the truth is this: provocation is desperation disguised as power. Why do people provoke? Because they cannot force you into open conflict by strength alone. They lack the means to attack directly, so they bait you into attacking yourself. This is the essence of the provoker's trap. They do not defeat you. They lure you into defeating yourself. Think of 18th century duels. An insult, a public slight, a challenge to honor. These were designed to provoke. The man who reacted without thought walked into the killing ground on someone else's terms. The man who refused to be provoked kept his life, his position, and often his enemy's reputation as the aggressor. Now, consider this in your own battles. How many times have you seen someone push until you wanted to answer in anger? That moment, the moment you must respond, is the moment you are in their grip. The provoker thrives on your reaction. It confirms that they can reach you. It tells them what wounds you. It tells them how to make you bleed again. But what happens when the provoker fails? When their words slide off you like rain on steel? When you do not flinch, do not bite, do not even acknowledge their attempt? They are forced to escalate. They push harder, more recklessly. They spend more energy trying to force a reaction. This is where patience turns into a weapon. In military strategy, this is called overextension. A force that pushes too far, too fast, loses supply lines, loses cohesion, loses the ability to retreat. In politics and business, it is the same. The rival who keeps attacking an unresponsive target begins to look obsessed, unstable, even foolish. Look to history. During the Cold War, both sides tested each other with provocations, spy planes, blockades, propaganda. The most effective responses were not wild retaliations, but calculated silence or minimal action. This forced the aggressor to take bigger risks to get a reaction, until those risks threatened their own position more than their enemies. The provoker's downfall is written in their own impatience. They must keep feeding the fire, because without your reaction, their position gains nothing. And the longer they act without results, the weaker they appear. You can accelerate this collapse. Offer them small signs of attention, just enough to make them believe they are getting closer. Then withdraw again. Let them chase the ghost of your reaction deeper into the trap. Imagine a court rival whispering lies about you. You know he wants you to respond publicly. You say nothing. Only glance at him once in passing, as if he is beneath notice. He whispers louder, invents greater lies, draws more eyes to himself, until his obsession exposes him as the true threat to peace. The public, the allies, even the neutral observers begin to shift their sympathy. You have done nothing, yet you win. This is the beauty of breaking the provoker. They destroy their own image while you remain untouched. But there is one final truth you must remember. When a provoker is cornered by their own failure, they may lash out in desperation. This is their most dangerous moment. A wounded animal fights harder, not smarter. You must be ready, not to react blindly, but to finish them cleanly when they have no strength left to resist. Control over your own emotions is the first shield. Patience is the second. But the sword that ends the provoker is timing. Strike only when they have stripped themselves bare, when their resources are spent, when their credibility is gone. Until then, let them dance. Let them waste their strength. Let them burn every bridge in their pursuit of you. Remember, those who provoke are already in a weaker position. They reveal their fear of you every time they try to draw you out, and fear is the seed of their downfall. There is a kind of power that does not shout. It does not rush. It does not explain itself. It simply exists and bends the world around it. This is the power of the immovable figure. To be immovable is not to be rigid. It is to be anchored in such a way that no force can pull you from your position. Because you control when, how, and if you move. Most people are leaves in the wind. They sway with every change in opinion, every whisper, every glance from their rivals. But the immovable figure is the mountain the wind cannot move. The one whose silence is as heavy as stone, whose presence shapes the entire game without a single visible effort. Think of Marcus Aurelius during the plague in Rome. While panic spread through the streets, he appeared calm, unshaken. His composure was not weakness, it was command. Because in a storm, people follow the one who does not sway. When you are immovable, you project inevitability. Your enemies see no way to shift you without destroying themselves. Your allies trust you because you do not panic. The undecided lean toward you because you appear as the safest ground to stand on. But how do you become such a figure? First, control your expressions. The immovable figure is unreadable. No triumph, no fear, no irritation should cross your face without your permission. When you betray nothing, others are forced to guess. And in their guessing, they reveal more about themselves than they learn about you. Second, master the art of selective movement. You must not respond to every challenge. The dog that barks at every passerby is not feared. It is pitied. Move only when the movement changes the entire game. If your actions are rare but decisive, each one will carry the weight of a hammer blow. Third, anchor your decisions in purpose, not reaction. Reaction is weakness. Purpose is strength. When every choice you make is tied to your own long-term plan, no provocation can draw you from your course. The immovable figure also understands the battlefield beyond the obvious. In politics, this may mean holding your position in the face of slander, knowing that time will expose your accusers. In business, it may mean refusing to enter a price war, letting competitors destroy their margins while you preserve your resources. In personal life, it may mean resisting the urge to explain yourself to those who seek to undermine you. There is a deeper psychology here. Humans are unsettled by what they cannot move. They grow frustrated, then desperate. They begin to imagine weaknesses where none exist, and when they act on those false assumptions, they make mistakes you can exploit. This is why the immovable figure often wins without lifting a hand. The enemy destroys themselves in the struggle to shake you. History is full of such examples. Consider the strategy of Fabius Maximus during Rome's war with Hannibal. He refused to meet Hannibal in open battle, despite public pressure. He held his ground, let time weaken the Carthaginian forces, and struck only when the conditions favored Rome. His enemies called him a coward, until they realized he had preserved the Republic by refusing to be moved. But do not mistake immovability for inaction. A mountain may appear still, but beneath the surface, forces shift, roots grow, and foundations strengthen. Your stillness must be alive with preparation. When the time comes to act, you must strike with such certainty that no one ever doubts your choice. To reach this level requires patience, discipline, and the ability to endure attacks without flinching. Your reputation will be tested. Your resolve will be questioned. But if you stand firm, the storm will pass, and you will remain. Ask yourself, do you want to be the one who dances to the rhythm of others? Or the one who sets the rhythm without ever moving? The world bends to the figure it cannot shake. Be that figure. Be the one they cannot read, cannot provoke, cannot dislodge. And when they realize you are beyond their reach, that is when true power begins. Because an immovable figure does not just win the game. It becomes the board on which the game is played. Control is not always taken by force. Often it is surrendered without the victim ever realizing it. You do not shout. You do not threaten. You plant ideas. You bend emotions. You let their own mind become the cage. They believe they are free. Yet every choice they make serves you. That is the purest form of power, to rule without declaring you rule. Ask yourself, who controls you right now without your awareness? And who do you control without theirs? The unskilled ruler demands obedience. The true strategist makes obedience feel like freedom. If you have understood this, you have stepped closer to the untouchable. If you have not, you are already under someone else's hand. Comment below. Tell me your own strategies, your own experiences of unseen control. Subscribe if you wish to master this art. And share this with those who think they cannot be manipulated, so they may discover how wrong they are.